Welcome to the Assistant Lab podcast, hosted by Victoria Ratton and Arnell Martin.
This podcast is dedicated to the executive assistant profession, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
We've created this podcast for the outliers, the linchpins, the assistants who are serious about their careers. This is a podcast for those who are preparing for the future today.
This is a space for no-nonsense content, benchmarking and tracking industry and world trends, as well as interesting interviews with exceptionally inspirational people. The goal here is to stimulate new ways of thinking and being in this profession.
So, on with the show.
Welcome to this next episode of the Assistant Lab, and welcome back from the summer break. Although it wasn't quite a break for me, I worked all through, but was kept very, very busy with lots of bits and pieces. I know Anel managed to get a little bit of a break, but she's been super, super busy as well. We've got a fantastic guest for you today, truly inspirational, real grit and determination, which I absolutely love. So we're welcoming Jess Gardiner of the Assistant Room. I know many people will know her, certainly in the UK, but the Assistant Room is represented or has members in 48 countries around the world, so it's quite an extraordinary achievement. Of course, with all our guests, we take them back to the beginning, and Jess's journey, like all our guests, has not been linear. And it's a really interesting path and of how she ended up to where she is today, and really inspiring as well. We cover a lot of ground with Jess, and yeah, we get a bit controversial at times. We are finally saying the stuff that actually needs to be said out loud about this profession. But we do cover executive energy, toxic loyalty, how to be a good quitter. We talk about the awards part of our industry. We talk about networking. We really just say it how it is. We're looking more, I think, for a revolution rather than evolution. But I think those of you that are really vested in this profession, you're going to get a lot out of this. And if anything, it will make you think. As I say, Jess is incredibly inspiring, really high energy, and all I can say really is grab a glass of wine or a non-alcoholic cocktail or a cup of coffee and sit back and enjoy. Well, hello, Jess. Finally, we have got you on the Assistant Lab. So excited. Thank you so much for giving up your time today. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you both for having me. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, isn't it? We've been trying to organise this for ages. Thank you for both being so patient with me. I know that my diary's been all over the place, so it's just really nice to have this chat finally.
Brilliant. We've been looking forward to it, Jess.
Yeah, and it's all been fun and games running a small business, as we all know only too well, with a rocky global economy. Yeah. So we'll get straight into it, Jess. Let's go back through your background. So normally we like to go back to when people were 16 if they're a UK guest, because that's a big age for us. We've done our GCSEs. Are we going to do A-levels, college, uni, that kind of thing? What was happening to you?
So I had a couple of things going on. I grew up in a family where my dad owns his own construction business. He does absolutely all sorts all over the world. So I sort of started working with him when I was very young, doing a bit of paperwork, a bit of bookkeeping. It was a bit of a baptism of fire. My dad's an ex-army dad. So yeah, there's absolutely no mistake that he will not spot, and there's nothing that he won't pull you up on. So that was a little bit of a kind of, you know, being thrown into the deep end of what it was like working for someone. And then at the same time, I was also thinking, right, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life? You know, I loved art, I love culture, I love music. So the plan was to go to college, which I did do, and study art before going on to, you know, art college, Central St Martin's or something like that, and study. So yeah, there was a lot going on when I was 16. I think I've always been someone who loves just being super busy all the time, really. So that was that. And then obviously went to college. My dreams of becoming an artist, though, were completely scuppered because during my A-level exams of fine arts, I developed an essential tremor, which the only thing that stops my right hand from shaking is a glass of wine. And I mean that seriously. When I was diagnosed, the doctor said, I'm going to tell you this, the only thing that's going to stop you shaking is alcohol. That is absolutely no excuse, though, to have a pint of beer every single day at the pub. But yeah, it was one of those weird things, because I was still working with my dad at the time. I absolutely loved it. But this idea of what I'd wanted to do for years and years and years and years, it just suddenly, it wasn't something that I could do anymore. Like, my plan had gone. So I decided then to throw myself into the deep end of full-time PA work. I started working in Essex. I worked in property before moving up to London for my first EA role when I was 20, working in healthcare. I supported the COO and the HR director of the biggest patient testing company in the UK, which was absolutely amazing. I loved it. I think because I've grown up with a CEO, I've always been surrounded by what I call exec energy. So I love learning about business. I love seeing people operate in kind of their sort of unique business bubble, and how they do things as well as how they don't do things, and learning on the job. And it was just wonderful. I mean, the first day of my first role working at the pathology business, it was the first day that my COO had started and the HR director started, and I was so nervous. I ended up throwing a cup of hot black coffee all over down my COO's nice white shirt. I felt so out of my depth. I knew what I was doing, but I thought, oh my God, I'm in London now. Like, this is it. I've made it. And then I loved that job. I really, really did. And I built an internal PA network at that company. I put my hand up to be the global events lead and organised an event at like the Natural History Museum for 750 people, and barbecues on boats, as well as doing the EA stuff. And I just loved it. I mean, I think if you have a really wonderful boss or a great company that you work for, you can have the most rewarding job as an executive or a personal assistant. It's better than any business school that you can go to. It's better than, from a networking perspective, how many people want to be able to, have 5 minutes with the CEO just to get their opinion on something. And you never get that. But if you're the EA or the PA, you can. So I think I really took advantage of all of this exposure that I had when I was a PA to all of the execs that I had access to, and it just meant that I was able to really push myself out of my comfort zone, and also kind of grow outside of my job description with confidence, which I loved. It never was without pushback. I always got no, or well, that's not really your job. But I think the biggest bit of advice that I give to people now when they're asking for something and they do get a no is the first question or your immediate response should be, okay, well, what do you need me to do for you to give me that opportunity? What do you need to see from me to make that happen? Whether that's a pay rise, a promotion, extra responsibility, whatever. So I loved that job, and I only left because my COO left, and I was absolutely heartbroken, like heartbroken. I can still remember when he left, and I thought, right, I'm going to stick it out. It's absolutely fine. Dougie came in, the replacement, and I thought, great, new challenge. And then I just very quickly realized that the reason why I loved that job so much was because of the person that I was supporting. I mean, we're still great friends now. If he's ever in London, we still go out for dinner. He's like, out of all the bosses that I had, he's like the love of my life when it comes to my bosses that I had.
Yeah. I totally understand that, and I think that's happened probably for me, and I know, well, it definitely has for me. And you do really like I remember when my director left to go to another FTSE company, and we'd had like 7.5 years together. We were tight as anything professionally. And I remember when he left, I was like, right, okay, I'll give the new guy a go. And I did. And it was literally down the toilet.
Not the same.
And the thing is, I had the gut instinct from within minutes of meeting him. I knew we weren't going to work, but I thought, you've got to, the PA always seems to be the one that has to give more of an inch in a mile, that that type of thing.
Absolutely.
And I just knew. I remember actually it got so vile with us that I remember quitting, sending an email to two of the other directors saying, I'm quitting with immediate effect, because here's my bottom line: I'd rather scrub toilets in a pub and stack shelves at Tesco's than be devalued by somebody like this. And I packed up my stuff, and I remember I said to the other PAs in the office, ladies, I'm out. I'm sorry, but I'm value myself too much. I'm happy to go and claim benefits for a bit, but I know me, and I'll land on my feet somehow. And I remember walking down that corridor with my box, and I had loads of stuff there, and the head PA there was like, "I'll get the rest of your stuff sent back to you, don't worry." But she basically looked at me and was like, "Respect." But I'm just saying it can happen. You can end up, it's more the synergy with the person you're supporting sometimes in the company.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, I talking about that, your experience there, Vic, and I don't know, Anel, if you kind of have experienced this before, but I mean, I went through my career, you know, supporting a couple of other people, and ended up working in my last role in 2016, which was my last full-time PA role, supporting a founder of a ultra high net worth buying agency for property. And she was an amazing, amazing lady, you know, to do business. But I mean, the environment wasn't for me. Let's just say that. And I talk a lot now about toxic loyalty to bosses who are just not deserving of us, really. You know, I think it's this mindset change that we need to make collectively that actually ended up pushing me out of being a full-time EA, and obviously started the assistant room. So, you know, silver lining to everything. But it's that toxic loyalty piece. Like, I think far too many people think that they have to put up with bad behavior, negative behavior, toxic workplace culture, just because they feel like they have to stay somewhere to prove something, or, you know, a recruiter's not going to look at me because I've only been here 6 months. But the reality is, if something's not working, something's not working. And this toxic loyalty piece, we need to break it. You know, one of the things my dad taught me growing up was how to be a good quitter. And that's what I did in 2016 in my last role. You know, I pretty much quit on the spot, walked away from a very, very well paid job with no savings and no job to go to, just because I thought, this isn't for me anymore. And I don't need to be here, and I don't need to prove myself to be here. You know, there's things I don't agree with, so I'm going to just take a couple of months out. My mental health was absolutely like on the floor, couldn't work. And ultimately, the reason why my mental health had got to that point was because the person that I was working with, or the company I was working with, it wasn't, it was just the opposite of the ideal situation that I would ever want. Luckily, it was the first negative experience that I had as a PA. I was very lucky throughout my entire career. But it really taught me the power of actually saying, no, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And, you know, I'm not just a PA. You don't need to treat me like this. And I'm going to be able to give my effort and my energy to another company and another person who really embraces that and allows me to shine. So to take 2 months off, that was my plan in 2016. And yeah, I walked away from a job with no savings and no job to go to, and I had literally no money in the bank. I had to move back home. For the first 6 months of running the assistant room, I lived on eggs and toast, to the point where I was eating poached eggs every single day, that I actually developed an intolerance to runny eggs. So I couldn't have brunch for about like 5 years. It was just awful. I love going to brunch. But I started the assistant room just to keep me busy in this 2 months, and it really took off very quickly and very unexpectedly. But ultimately, it was created to be the platform that I always wished had existed when I was a PA, which was something that was affordable, something accessible, something flexible, and something that back in 2016, and I know that you've done a brilliant job for so long to represent our industry, but I think EPA is one of the only organizations that has never restricted its kind of narrative or the language that you use to a very old school idea of what this industry is. You know, I remember back in 2016 looking at what was out there and thinking, the word secretary is still being used, or the only resources that are available are for straight white women. You know, what about you know, Claudia, who sat next to me 3 years ago, who's from, you know, who's got Indian heritage? What about Sam, who I used to work with, who's a gay guy? Like, what is out there for everybody if you're not a straight white woman? So it started by, I wanted to create something. I said it was a hobby, didn't expect it to take off, but I wanted to create something that could appeal to the kind of younger generation, and was diverse and was quite kind of forward thinking at the time. And yeah, and now fast forward 6-7 years, we established in December 2016. We now have nearly 50,000 people who engage in what we do every single year across our magazine, our podcast, our events, and our membership. So it's wild. I never thought I'd be here, but I'm so glad that I am.
And so are we. But I mean,
So
now we've talked a lot. We've talked a lot. One of the reasons we set up this podcast is because some of our views on the industry are considered controversial. And so therefore, you know, me and Anel have spoken at conferences all over the world together, and we're controversial. And we didn't feel it was it. We felt it was stuff that needed to be said. And actually having our own podcast meant that we can say the stuff that we want to say. And I remember doing the focus groups in 2016 with PAs up and down the UK, different age ranges, generations. You know, obviously EPA was the first organisation worldwide to lead a campaign for men, and I got all this hate and trolling that I thought you were a women for equality, and you know, there was like a barrage of stuff. But yeah, it's still a funny old industry, isn't it, Anel?
But you know, Jess, what freaks me out, and I've had this conversation with Vic. I am 44 years old, and I'm considered young in my industry. I even have the gray hair, but I'm considered young. In no other industry is a 44-year-old considered young. So when I look at, like you said, when I'm a younger person trying to come into this industry, what we see and what we carry forward does influence how they feel they fit, how much they engage with the profession as something I might want to do. And let's face it, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in South Africa, being a personal assistant or an executive assistant is not sold to you. We have very little formal, direct training for this career path. This job finds you. But now I'm a younger person. This job has found me. I'm looking around for resources that make sense and resonate. And like you say, you look around and you think, when I see programs in South Africa, I can't speak for the rest of the world. We have the most outdated programs for training events. It is wash, rinse, repeat. And I mean, it's very seldom you see something where it's a topic and you think, wow, I hadn't thought of that. My mind is blown. You know, so I think, like you said, sometimes the alternatives, if you don't find what you're looking for in the market, sometimes you have to go and create it. And I always say to people, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm going to do different things, but my niche is out there. There are a handful of people who need what I have and what I have to share. And those are the people I'm really interested in. I'm not interested in that mass production. There's enough for those people.
Yeah, I mean, I describe the way that we do learning and development at the assistant room, especially in the membership, which is a combination of talks and masterclasses and panel discussions with either very, very experienced EAs and PAs who don't really get a voice given to them, because very similar, and Vic, I'm sure you'll agree with me, very similar in the UK to South Africa now. It is very wash, rinse, repeat. You know, when I was creating the L&D part of the membership, I looked back at everything that I'd experienced when I was a PA, and I used to think, you have the same people talking about the same topic year after year after year. And if you learn from one perspective, that's actually extremely dangerous and very, very limiting, and doesn't give you a growth mindset, because you're just absorbing somebody else's, you know, mindset and the way that they do things. Like, we need to get into this growth mindset as an industry. But it was about giving people access to learning and development for the assistant room that I describe as like a big slap in the face with a lovely warm cuddle afterwards. Like,
I love that.
You sound like that sounds like Steve Miller, who's the presenter of that show Fat Families. That's what he says. I'm tough love with a hug. Steve's gone viral again recently, and I know him through socials.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm on the same wavelength then, because it's literally the way that I've described the approach that I think is best for so many years. Like, we don't need, as an industry, to have to ask to take a full day out of the office to learn something where the first well, collectively for 2 hours of the day, someone is selling themselves or talking about their experience or saying, you know, I'm this and I'm that. No, like we do learning and development. It's short, but, you know, bite-sized learning, 45 minutes to an hour with the same amount of content that a lot of other networks or organizations would draw out in a 3 or 4 hour session. The price goes up. It becomes inaccessible. You don't remember anything. It's not as impactful, and it doesn't give us what we need as an industry. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. I like the fact that we are seen as controversial, because we're not controversial. We just don't beat around the bush.
No, and I'm not. Do you know what? I'm not liked by certain leaders in the industry, and I'm honestly beyond caring, because it's been 20 years of me attending and organising PA events. I both know I turned 40 this year. I organised my first PA training day when I was 20 years old in the city, and between the ages of 20 and 30, going to networking events up and down the country and conferences in Europe and stuff. I was like the anomaly in that room all the time. I was the youngest by far. And I always kept sort of going on and on at some of the networks I was part of back then. We need to do more to attract more of me here, because we just couldn't get them through the door. But here's an interesting thing for you. Me and my husband did a big clear out recently, and I've got what's called my PA boxes, and I am some sad act that I keep scrapbooks of tickets from pyramids and stuff. But in my PA boxes, I've got every single program, brochure, leaflet of everything I've attended over the last 20 years. And I went back through some of this fairly recently, and it is very much rinse and repeat. I looked at a conference that was for sale, not one of ours, last year in the industry, and I'm thinking, my God, I've seen that content somewhere before. I pulled up something from 15 years ago, and it's the same articles being brought out as well, again and again and again. And another controversial thing I'm going to mention, feel free to debate me on it. The amount of assistants recently who are saying that finding suppliers is the biggest part of their role. I'm sorry, but you're a procurement professional. That should not be the biggest part of any assistant's role. I'm absolutely gobsmacked it's been going that way. You
know what? I think this comes down to this feeds into a bigger issue. And I think it's the fact that a lot of people have fallen into this role. And now, like you were saying, you know, this job finds you. Like, I would challenge any single person to I would challenge any single person to confirm that they had a stand at their careers fair at school on how to be an executive assistant or a person. It doesn't exist. So I think the issue is that we've got an entire global industry that have fallen into this role. So you're not trained specifically in university to do it. So you're walking in with an immediate disadvantage. There's a lack of confidence. You haven't got like this same purpose that, you know, somebody else has who has been, you know, training for something their entire life. It's complete, like we're at a disadvantage the moment we walk through the door in our first role, and when we continue to walk through the door, unless we assert our dominance and really kind of get a grip on what we want to do going forward and how to achieve it. So I think when it comes down to assistants saying in any kind of way, you know, my job's turned into this or this or this, it's actually because there's the lack of skills given to people that should be confirmed to us all as part of our role, part of who we are: negotiation, delegation, communicating and pushing back, holding boundaries. They are all things that every single person in an organization will practice on a daily basis. Yet for us, we just accept it. Loads are just yes men in this company, in this industry. We suffer from some of the worst amounts of burnout out of any group within an organization. We have a severe lack of kind of you know, continuity across the board regarding salaries. There is absolutely zero career ladder. And because it's a female dominated industry as well, working for executives, which is a male dominated role, it's like we are just stuck. We're just stuck in this place.
Can I say something controversial to butt in there? I think our industry helps feed the ducks here, if I'm being honest. Like this, I'd hate to say victim narrative, but there is a little bit of that. So it's feeding them to continue feeling this way. Yeah. Because Jess, you've completely hit on points, but I've said to her now several times, this is the worst I've ever seen confidence levels in assistants. We weren't like this even during the global recession. we weren't, and you know, our industry was being slaughtered here with redundancies. But from every day on LinkedIn, I see another post, and it's really, really shocking. And I don't think parts of our industry have helped that. They've helped to empower it for these PAs to continue feeling like this.
But Jess, you said something very, very interesting that ties into this. Knowing when to quit. There's a whole dynamic here. When I cannot hold the line, when I cannot hold a boundary, or when I'm in a culture that is toxic, or a culture that's misaligned with who I am, we feel we need to fit in. That's great, but it's like being in a bad marriage. You've wasted the best years of your life where you could have been contributing to the success of a team, where you fit, where you feel good, where you achieve. But you've now told yourself, I can't be a failure. I can't quit. I can't move on. So I think a lot of this, again, you now feel there's this level of discretion that we have to maintain, which I totally agree with. But when are abusers the most successful? When people keep quiet. Okay. So we've now taken that just a little too far. And I love when you said this dysfunctional loyalty, this I've got to stick with it sometimes. And I'm not advocating just quit willy-nilly. I'm saying, think about where you are. I don't know about you ladies, but that first 6 months, you have up and down days. It's like a roller coaster. But for me personally, if by the 6-month mark, I feel I'm not making headway, I would rather leave and save myself the aggravation, because at the 6-month mark, you know if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, and you're not the only person in an organization who will do that if you feel that way. You know, I feel like we are the only group internally that is just stubborn to the point that it actually it holds us back.
Yeah.
It's a stubbornness, and I don't know where it's come from. If it's not working, you know, obviously don't necessarily do what I do. I mean, I remember when I quit and then I thought, oh my God, what the hell have I done? Because obviously I had no money coming in. But at the end of the day, like, start being curious about what's out there. You know, I kind of feel as though the worst time to ever be looking for your new job is when you're desperate to leave your current role, because you compromise on your values, you compromise on what you want going forward, you compromise on your package because you just want to get out. And it also comes down to asking the right questions and being responsible and respectful to yourself when you're going through that recruitment process, and not just seeing it as, I'm so lucky to be here in this room with this person who could potentially hire me. No. Like, let's again change the mindset with this. You know, it's about you figuring out, does this person, you know, match my values? Do they match what I want? Can they give me what I want? You know, everybody should be asking the questions like, how are you going to support my learning and development? You know, what did you like about your previous PAs? What did you dislike about your previous PAs? What is the biggest challenge that you've got going on in the next 6 months that I can get involved in? And how would you like that extra support? It's about representing ourselves at a deeper level beyond diary management and travel organisation, because if we only represent ourselves like that, that's how we will be treated. We'll be
paid.
And we won't be able to grow.
It's back to that, like, I mean, obviously I know I'm a mouthy, hardened woman, and that's why I turned around and quit in the way I did, because I won't put up with that stuff. I'm trying to be professional, but that's why I said there's a bit of snobbery in the UK. We've had a lot of this going on during the cost of living. There's 2.5 million jobs in hospitality, and Brits don't want to do it. But that's what I would do that, and that's the thing. I would go and scrub toilets in a pub. I did go and work at Sainsbury's online team through the night during the pandemic. Like, I'd actually prefer an assistant to walk out of a job and go into a job like that just for a short time, because at least you're getting back some self-value and worth. And that's why I put it in that. I kept a copy of that resignation letter, actually. That it was just masterful, because I was very bold about it to the highest people in this company. That's my bottom line. And I'm off. I'm not, there's no negotiating, I'm off. And you know what happened there? So I got on the train to go home, called my now husband, and he was like, thank God for that. Like, seriously, I'm so happy for you. Well done, Vic. It's fine. We'll work it out somehow. And I'm like, I know, I'll go and work at a supermarket. I don't care. And by the time I got home, I'd had a call from one of the senior board directors saying, like, we can't believe you've just gone. And I said, I've made myself really clear, like, that is it. Nobody devalues and degrades me as an assistant. And they basically offered to remove him as my director immediately, and for me to go and work for some other board directors, and the problem would be basically vanished. And I was like, okay, fine, I will come back on those terms, but I know that we're still going to have to interact, but I want my resignation letter on his file, because this won't be the last complaint. I won't be the last person, because it never is. It's always a pattern.
No, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It's always that one boss, that one person. Ladies, we've talked about the challenges in these roles. Jess, I just want to come back. What have been some of the challenges in setting up the assistant room?
I think to begin with, because I didn't really set it up as a business, it was just something to keep going. I think I sort of realized after a year, oh, okay, this is something, and I'd done all the work by that point to establish it formally, as a corporate entity. So I kind of did it without really realizing, which when I look back, I kind of think it just plays into this really strong belief that I have that I could not have done this if I hadn't been an executive assistant first. Every single skill that I've got as an EA or a PA, yes, it's transferable into another EA PA role, but it's also transferable into an executive role.
Absolutely.
Like the reality of it, and I think a lot of people in this industry just don't understand their they just don't understand their true potential, because the way that we are convinced think of ourselves, because there isn't that need to go to university to do it. This role must be low skilled. You'll know that it's not low skilled at all. And you get obviously incredible executive assistants in this industry in the same way as you get incredible people in lots of other industries. But I think for me, the constant struggle, there's a couple of different things. Firstly, I think when we launched the membership just before COVID, it'd been something that I'd poured 18 months into. We had the entire website redesigned. Like, it was a big, big, big project. It was always something that was in sort of the plan when I realized, actually, I'm going to take this seriously, when I wasn't going back into work. But I think from when we initially launched, it was in the pandemic. Obviously, everyone was panicking. I delayed the launch by about 3 or 4 months. Because I thought it was going to be a flu and we were going to get over it really quickly and it was fine. And obviously it definitely wasn't just flu, and it definitely wasn't fine. And we're very lucky to have come out of the pandemic relatively unscathed, which I'm extremely grateful for. But the one of the really big things that I struggled with was the very surprising backlash that I got from particular people within the industry who I considered my peers, and who I'd developed at that point what I thought was a friendship. And a kind of very, a friendship at a distance, but a friendship people, if you ever have a problem, you can phone someone or you can text someone, just ask for a bit of advice. And there was a particular incident which really took me by surprise, which almost led me to have a completely nervous breakdown. And I'm a tough nut. Like, I'm not somebody who breaks easily, but it was something that really deeply affected my mental health. And there were a lot of problems that I had to address that I'd never addressed before, at a time where I had absolutely minimal money in the bank, but I had to be able to spend what I had on kind of legal advice. But also get my head back in the game and kind of really understand, okay, well, what we're doing is incredible as a network. And I had to really rediscover why I was doing it, because it completely threw me off. I won't go into too much detail, because it's one of those situations that if you know, you know. But that was one of the things that I really struggled with, the mental health and the impacts of kind of toxic and negativity within the industry from particular people. But then the other thing that I kind of regularly struggle with, or regularly find is a bit of a challenge, is trying to get assistants to understand what they're worth. So we have the membership, for example. There's a lot in it. We built it in the same way that, if you're a member of Albright or Soho, that costs like 150 quid a month, 200 pounds a month. The content that we have in our membership is exactly the same level, same amount, same frequency, and it's 24 quid a month. But that still seems to be an issue for a lot of assistants to think, I'm worth that. I'm not going to ask my boss to pay for that because they're not going to pay for it. And it's like, okay, well, have you actually asked? And they're like, no, they're just going to say no. Well, actually, you should ask, and you should be investing in your own professional development and your learning, and you should be pushing that, because if that narrative doesn't come from you, it doesn't come from anyone else. So it's like, what are you worth? But that's a kind of ongoing challenge. But
and,
yeah,
and it's called personal development for a reason, Jess. I so what you're saying. At the end of the day, I think that moves the responsibility from me to somebody else, from me to my boss, from me to HR. It is not somebody else's job. Yes, it's fantastic if your boss supports you, gives input into that process. But you know what? That's your CV. That's your career. That's not somebody else's. So I totally resonate with that. And I think that is a global issue. That's not just a UK issue. I think we experience this everywhere.
It never used to be that bad. This is not a COVID thing, and this was going on before COVID. I'd say I always harp onto the EPA members because I've tracked the changes, not just the stats and facts of 2008 onwards, but you can see this downward trajectory on the role in terms of confidence and influence. I mean, EPA, as you know, ran 90% free of charge for almost 3 years. And a PA who we'd given a free membership to asked me to help her write a business case to persuade her boss to let her have a free membership. And I said to her, no, I'm sorry. The fact you didn't bothering to ask him when I'm giving something to a FTSE company that's worth billions, and we're a not-for-profit with no money, like nothing, and we're running free of charge for you, like to get permission to ask for something that's been gifted to you for free.
I think this comes back to the issue where most people falling into this industry, it's not an empowering role to have. It's just not. It's not a role that people look at and respect. No. And that's a global industry issue. And I actually don't know whether or not we're ever going to overcome that.
I've thought that as well, to be honest. I have, because I've been in this game so long now, having tracked all these patterns, it does make me think, because I don't know, like I felt that I had same things so much tougher than some of my peer group in my 20s to early 30s, because I was pulled up by recruiters on my accent, coming from the wrong side of the track. I've talked about all this before, not having gone to university. And so for me, if there's somebody closed the door, I'd find an open window. That's just how I'm built.
Yeah.
But there just doesn't seem, I don't know, I know COVID's been exhausting for everyone, but the fight just seems to have kind of gone out. And I think it's the PAs themselves.
Over.
I know.
But the thing is that the drum is being banged on the wrong side of it. Like, we need to change it. And the reality is that this entire industry globally, not everybody, but a lot of people are waiting for it to come to them, and then they're not seeing any change. And then there's this discussion of, well, we're never going to be respected. We're just seen as an EA or a PA. We're not given this, we're not given that. Well, do something about it. Like, change the way that you present yourself at work. Like, if you turn up as the person, or show up as the person that you want to be viewed at. It's why we were talking earlier, before obviously we started this conversation, about the importance of headshots. Visual representation. You don't need to be super glam, you don't need to be full of Botox and fillers, you don't need to have your nails done. You don't need to wear a wardrobe where you're dripping in Chanel or anything like that. But people make their mind up of you visually in the first 5 seconds of meeting you or seeing your photograph.
It matters.
If you are an EA or a PA that demands respect and wants the bigger roles or the higher salaries, but you have a selfie on your LinkedIn profile, and that's the first thing that an employer sees when they're going through an interview process with you, and you're in a group setting or whatever, with a cocktail in your hand on holiday, what do you expect? Like, what do you expect? The C-suite?
Yes, it all comes back to that branding component. If we took the average executive assistant, I'm not even talking top tier, I'm talking mid-level, and you stripped away the title, the wording, this is an employee without even doing any development that ticks 8 out of 10 of the top skills for 2025, according to the World Economic Forum, in their sleep, before they get up in the morning, before they've had a cup of coffee. Okay, let's take the naming convention out. Suddenly you've got an incredibly competent, well-versed on policies, somebody who's reliable, somebody who'll go the extra mile. I often think that this naming convention thing is the real problem. And I always advise assistants, it starts with you. This disrespect, this level, we've all experienced it in pockets. But if I look back on my career, and maybe it's because we all tend to be a little bit, I mean, I know where my boundaries are. And the older I got in my career, the more I progressed, the stronger those boundaries were. My non-negotiables were just that. But it served me. My team always respected me. My organization respected me. But it's because it started with me. It started with how I show up. It started with what I allow. And I think that's part of the problem. And I think we are so tied to that name. If we can just think, and I mean, we have to call it something, sure. But we are a resource. The only resource in that office where the boss walks in and says, Jess, I need a baby elephant for a birthday party. And after that initial, like, okay, give me a minute.
Moment.
And I mean, I'm using a stupid example, but if you think about it, there's no other profession where the boss walks in and says, I want this, they'll say, that is not in my job description. I don't know how to do that. Okay. We are like the Swiss Army knife. Yeah. But we're not operating with that confidence, and it's frustrating.
Okay. But can I just park something with you both? In fact, like now, obviously, you can tell us more about the SA market. But let's talk very quickly about awards. So, right, I'm going to bring this up. It's going to be controversial. I'll probably get some hate emails. That's fine. We have got more awards than the construction and property industry, which is 10 times bigger than ours. We've got more awards than you can shake a stick at. Every time I open up my LinkedIn feed, I see I'm a finalist, I'm shortlisted, I'm nominated, please vote for me. Like I'm not been like that. It's the most I've ever seen this year. And I'm all for, listen, I've judged awards, I've organised them, I've been behind the scenes. I know exactly what's gone on with some of these awards over the years. And I'm a big champion of wanting PAs to be highlighted. But it just kind of makes me think we've got all these awards, but why isn't that? There's two bits to it, which I'm probably not going to articulate very well. There's some PAs that are constantly going for every single award out there. And then part of me feels a little bit saddened because I'm like, you don't need to validate that you're an excellent PA by winning an award. Like, seriously, I've actually taken off my CV that I'm a multi-award winning executive assistant now, because there's so much of it now. And so there's that validation piece, but then it's like awards are in any industry good for raising profile, perception, but it just doesn't seem, I'm not sure it's entirely working in our world. I've got to be honest, I don't think, not in the way it works in finance and, you know.
Now, as an outsider, you know, you did ask for the outside opinion. There has been a huge spike in UK awards, massive, over the last 3-4 years. You know, and I just think from my perspective, if I'm a recruiter or I'm an executive hiring, if you start seeing every second PA is an award winner, what does the award mean? You know what I mean? More is sometimes just more, it's not better, you know, and I think there's a very fine line, and I think some of them, from what we see from the outside as you know, long distance spectators, looks very good. But I think there is sort of, you know, what does it mean at the end of the day? If there are 50 awards, everyone's PA of the year somewhere, what does it actually mean then? You know, so for us, we've got 3 awards. Those awards have been running for many, 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 many years. But everyone knows in the industry, it's those 3. One of them isn't, it's more office support, more your lower level roles, you know, your more junior roles. But for me, something like a Rising Star Award, brilliant. You know, there I can spot potential. But I think if we think about the awards in context, you know, there's a lot going on in the UK.
So I've got quite a controversial opinion on this, and I'm not for it. And it is a bit controversial, but it's the truth. So I like being controversial, and it's true. Not every award. I mean, there are some awards that are obviously very genuine. I think the idea of an awards, the concept of it is a brilliant concept to celebrate people, to recognize people. But there is, in my opinion, with most of the awards that are hosted here, not all of them, but some of them, there is zero credibility attached to what they do, because it is, in the same way that we've spoken about the learning and development, it is rinse and repeat. Same people win the same awards, same people are on the panels. You know, it's not different. I mean, we are one of the biggest networks. There's a reason we've never done a PA awards night. Like, and you would think that we would do something like that.
We're not in the game either. No,
exactly. I mean, we've got nearly 50,000 people, as I said earlier, who engage in what we do. We are the perfect group to hold an award that does have credibility, but there's no way I will touch it. In my opinion, the recent boom in awards in the UK is, yes, okay, to kind of celebrate people, but I also think that there is a very selfish undertone to a lot of these awards, where you have got brands who are just trying to push themselves out there and use it as a free marketing tool.
Yeah.
You know, and it's done disingenuinely, it's not done correctly. I posted actually something probably about a month and a half ago after I saw one awards being pushed, and I said, I implore everybody, ask yourself, is this company or this group credible? Is this the kind of company that you would be proud to win an award for? If you are being nominated anonymously, you know, are you seeing 50 other people in the same week also saying on LinkedIn that they've been nominated anonymously? You know, I don't think that there's much real understanding, not because people are not willing to understand, but just because there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. I don't think people realize actually how hard it is to drive nominations in this industry to an awards. So if you've got, you know, 50 people in 1 week saying we've been nominated anonymously, chances are you haven't been nominated anonymously. There's just something else going on that, you know, you really should take some responsibility in thinking, okay, well, is this legitimate? You know, is this something I want to celebrate? And that's the problem. You know, we've got no, you know, EPA, Vic, you are the only people, in my opinion, who really should be running an award as the national body. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm not stepping anywhere near it. And I know too much behind the scenes. And I will tell you one very quick story. And I was a judge on these awards. They're not my awards. But it just kind of goes back to making sure those processes are watertight and ethical. You know, I'm all about the ethics there. Now, this process had happened. It was PA of the year, and the woman who won, I was told that the background checking had been done, but a PA came to me who worked at the same company not long, literally within days of the awards ceremony taking place. And she basically said, I'm really disappointed in you, Vic, and this whole process, because I don't know whether you know, but I've made a grievance accusations against this PA for bullying and racism. And she told me this whole torrid tale. I mean, I actually went into London to meet her for a coffee, and I was with her for hours listening to this. And obviously there's two sides to every story. But the process did conclude 2 weeks after this woman had won this award, and she was sacked, gross misconduct, because the allegations were upheld. Now, you know, I said to her, look, it's very easy for me to say I'm a judge. They're not my awards. I've been told that background checking's been done. It was a self-nomination. But it really shook me up. And this was, you know, this was before COVID. It really shook me up, because it was like, I need to start actually questioning these processes as a judge, because my arse is on the line here. And
my credibility.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that was the truth of it. And I said to the organisers, had we have known that, she should have been removed from the process immediately, because although there is that innocent till proven guilty, you can't have somebody up for an award that's going through a HR process like that, of the gravity of those allegations. And so, you know, there's lots. I think in a way, I think there are other things we can do to get PA profile out there, get that perception sorted, but at the moment we do seem to be in this vacuum of awards after awards after awards, and I'm a big supporter of some of them. Like Jess said, some of them are absolutely fantastic, like they're amazing, but some of them I would question their ethics, their setup, their processes, their lack of diversity on their panels, and this little club of judges who are moving from one awards to the other. I don't judge awards anymore either. I don't say yes to any judging now. I've stepped away from that because I just, until all this is sorted out, I just can't put my name to it.
I just think if a lot of PAs and EAs, you know, being nominated for an award is amazing. You know, we're in an industry where confidence, we've already spoken about, is absolutely through the floor. And so, of course, you're going to want to celebrate the fact that you've been nominated. And of course, it's an amazing achievement if you've been nominated, regardless of what you've been nominated for. You know, it's lovely to be recognised. If we actually channeled all of the attention and effort that we were putting into these awards, which quite frankly don't have the same knock-on effect that other industry awards do. Like, say for example, I go to lots of awards ceremonies for female founders, and you know, with like We Are the City, Vic, you know how amazing it is, the work that Vanessa does and the opportunities that you get after that. After you've won that award as a PA, nothing happens. Really, you don't get new opportunities, you don't get speaking opportunities, you don't get, you know, you don't get featured in like a national magazine. It doesn't happen. So why don't we start again? This is a mindset thing. Yes, celebrate the wins and celebrate your achievement, but actually get excited about the opportunities that you can have within your role, where you can make a significant difference to the reputation that you have internally, to the impact that you make to the organization, to the bottom line of the business by becoming more strategic. You know, think about if you really are worth, you know, a nomination, take that confidence in house and ask for a 10 grand pay rise. Like, do something that is actually going to impact your life on a longer term basis, and not just be over the moment the awards are over.
Yeah. Which brings me neatly to the next question. And now you won't know, Jess and I had a conversation months ago. We were just having a catch up, and we were like, we are so bored of the term evolution. And Jess said, it's time for a revolution. And Susie Barham Stubley, the late Susie, who I know we all love, she talked about the evolution of the PA role like 15, 20 years ago. Like, I'm done with this that's one of the rinse and repeats, evolution. So let's talk revolution. What are we thinking? Are we thinking this industry needs a revolution?
You know, Vic, this is something that I've been preaching pre-COVID, that we have become so comfortable. We have become so smug. We look around, I mean, every industry has been interrupted. Every industry, every technology has been disrupted. What makes us think we are going to get through this unscathed? I feel like the little boy who says, you know, the sky is falling and nobody believes me, you know? And I've literally said, I do not believe that there is one set path for all of us. The world going forward for us as a profession is, what can I carve out individually? I'm a sole producer. What can I do that a machine can't do? Okay, there will be no roadmap. You'll have to build the road. And it feels like it's landing on ears. So that is how I see the revolution. It is personal responsibility. It's building your brand. It is your development that you need to take responsibility for. It's adding value everywhere you can in your space and thinking forward, not thinking we are here, this is how we do it, this is how we've always done it. Because let's look at all the big technology. You know, the music industry didn't wake up and realize streaming was going to be a thing. They kept holding on to hard copy CDs, and we are in that boat now. And if I've started using ChatGPT, started exploring it, people, if you don't have something else you can do, there's a lot of technology coming online very, very quickly. It's time to get serious. It feels like Vic and I have been ringing the alarm bells loudly for years now. And it just feels like I'm screaming up into the heavens, waiting for people, you know, to kind of cotton on and say, yes, this is an emergency. But I totally agree. Revolution, not evolution. It's too late. It is now. We need to do something drastic.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking, Jess?
So I think that we just need to have a reality check. Very much similar to what you said, Anel. this isn't working. And if it's not working now, and if it hasn't been working for the last couple of years, but we have been stubborn and trying to make a round peg fit in a square hole, we are going to be in a situation where in a couple of years' time, for some people, even in like 6 months' time, where they're going to be sat there thinking, oh my God, it's too late. I can't do anything. I can't change it. So there are a couple of things. I think firstly, we need to actually start stepping away from the job title of executive assistant or personal assistant that pigeonholes us into being an EA or a PA skill set. Like, I actually think that, it doesn't do us justice. It holds us back. It limits us. People's idea of who we are is completely wrong based on that particular job title.
Label.
Exactly what you said earlier, Anel. And it's really funny how you said about if you look at people's kind of skill set and what they can do. I always say, if you were to meet a stranger on the street and they asked, what do you do? And you said, I do this, I guarantee you they wouldn't think, oh, you're a PA.
They would never guess.
No, ever. So I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, I think we need to get out of what I refer to our job description mindset and step into the reality of our role. So it would be like in your performance review, you might say, I did really well on diary management this year, and I got you those meetings that you wanted with that client or with those clients. Actually start describing what you do. Rather than saying that, say something like, I did a competitor analysis. I understood exactly what were the key clients that all of our competitors had. I did the research. I built the relationships with the PAs at those companies, and I was able to secure you 5 meetings that you would not have had with the clients that you wanted, and X% converted into customers, and we gained this much revenue from that.
Amen.
That is what PAs and EAs do. That is what a strategic, personal and executive assistant does. But we are stuck in the mindset of a job description. The job description
disconnect.
The revolution is when we start actually standing up and saying, like, hang on, nobody knows what I do. Actually, I'm at an advantage because nobody knows what I do. I can start retraining people to understand what I am and who I am as a person. I think the reality that we have as an industry is that we're far too preoccupied with the opinion of other people and what they see as us.
Amen.
The problem is, and the thing that I actually say all the time, some people will either love this or they hate this, but I think that the people who criticize us for being in this role are actually the people who aren't important enough to have a PA in the first place. Because if they were important enough, i.e. exec level or SLT, they would know how vital you are within an organization. So I think start recognizing the influence and the power that you've got, and start reteaching people who you are as a person with confidence, with determination. Sit down with your boss and say, right, I do this, but my skill set is with people, so I want to come to the next client day. I want to be able to network with people. This is a revolution. We need to stop talking about all the things that are wrong and actually start making action, because you guys have been doing this way longer than me, and I'm sick and tired of it. We're still talking about the same things we spoke about 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like, what?
I talked about that. One of the obvious things is the disconnect about when you look on sites like LinkedIn, for example. Okay, that's the professional inverted commas site. Sorry, my views on that. But one of the big disconnects is what some assistants talk about on there compared to what other industries talk about in terms of their profession. And, and I know when I talked about this 2 or 3 podcasts ago, where I gave the very clear example of a disconnect. A top UK PA recruiter puts up a poll saying, oh, who's willing to fetch lunch and refreshments for their bosses? And we had a stream of senior assistants responding. Everybody was up in arms, I do, I don't, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there thinking, how is that important to business? Like I've said it on this podcast, I don't care. Business leaders don't care. That's not what's in the top 5 priorities. And that's part of the disconnect there. Like, I'm not saying you can't have silly little debates now and again, but when everybody else in the world is looking at our profession and seeing us debating over a poll whether we'll get our boss a sandwich, and then business leaders are worried about, are we going back into lockdown again this winter, and when's inflation going to come down, and I need to innovate, I need to grow, I need to be creative. Like, that's the disconnect we've got at the moment. We need to start having similar conversations that match what is actually going on with C-suite.
But Vic, just to tie back into that, I don't think, I think it's like a performance review. Everyone before that performance review will tell you, I'm exceptional. Let's be honest, everybody is. So we are not necessarily, we're talking to those individual performers, those people who've decided, this is what I want to do, whether it's temporarily, an in-between job, or this is what I want to do for my life. It does, to me, that doesn't matter. Jess made a great point, and I always say this, you get your business management training for free. You're learning from the front row seats. You genuinely have an edge just by that contact. But let's face it, we're talking about like maybe a 1%, or maybe pushing it globally, maybe a 5% of the people will survive that next shedding of jobs, because technology will take over the things that don't have the personal touch. Those guys who don't want to fetch the boss a cup of tea or a sandwich, you know what? That's something a machine can't do. If that's a little value add I can give you, I'm not saying that you should build your job around that, but being willing to do the little things, the human things, will be the edge in the future. So I hear what you're saying, and I don't think we're talking to everybody, and maybe that's why it's controversial. I'm tired of seeing the superheroes and a lot of it is a bit bubblegum. A lot of it is, I look at the branding and I think, I'm so embarrassed.
I have to laugh about it, because I've gone through every single emotion with all this candy floss in our industry, and I'm now at the point of slight insanity, which makes me just laugh, because I got out my launch slides when I launched EPA with the apprentice star Bianca Miller, and we had this wonderful big launch, and one of the big things on my slides, I had pictures of Superwoman and Candy Floss and all this stuff that the PAs and the focus groups had said to me when I was setting up EPA, please just get rid of it. And that's one of the things I've failed to do as the CEO of EPA, because it's got worse. It's got 10 times worse since we launched. Like,
but the good news is, I think a lot of our people are by this as well.
A lot of PAs are speaking up now.
I don't think I'm at a point now where I'm not trying to reach that other crowd. That other crowd, they've found what works for them. I want to talk to those people who are ready for the revolution. The others who are still slowly, it's like the frog in the pot and the boiling water. If you're still on the evolution path, I'm not your flavor of the week. I'm now talking to the converted. I'm not trying to convert anyone anymore.
Yeah, it's a waste of time, isn't it? Yeah. So what's Jess, for all this kind of sea of candy floss, there's been lots of good stuff as well. Lots of hard work that's been put in by lots of network leaders and trainers. But what are the lessons you've learned from being a PA and yourself, and then coming in to set up the assistant room, and then being on that journey for 7 years?
I think it comes down to what I said earlier. I consistently think I could never have done this without being a PA first. And actually, if you really think about what that means, it's extremely powerful, because I made this happen myself, whether or not I purposely made it happen, but I built this path for myself, and I've continued to go down this path, even when it was probably really easy to give up, during the pandemic. And I still have moments where I think, I could really easily walk into a lovely 6-figure corporate role now, and have all the benefits that, most people take for granted, maternity leave if I ever decide to have a family, holiday, and there's cover for me if there's, I decide to take a little bit of holiday. It's a completely different world, but I could not have done this job without being an EA first. And it's not like I've learned a ton more. I've just developed and honed my skill set a little bit more, but I learned everything I needed to run a company whilst I was a PA.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the biggest things that everyone should really kind of take on board, and as I said, realize and recognize the kind of the ability that you have to be more than what other people class you to be, in an EAPA role. People who don't understand it, as I said, that's why it's important to kind of talk about what you're really good at and utilize those skills, because naturally as well, if you're utilizing skills that you're good at, you're going to excel in them and everyone's going to think you're amazing. So I think that's one of the things. And then I think the other thing that we would all really agree with here, and I hope everybody listening to this will agree with, the power of your network. The power of your network, that's what's got me through these moments where I've just thought, no, I don't want to. Like Vic, you and I talk regularly. Now it's the first time I've met you, but obviously it's so lovely to meet you, and I know that we're going to have a really good friendship going forward. And I think that if you choose the place where you decide to spend your energy in the right way, you can get so much from it. If I was to go back now at the beginning of the assistant room, the advice I'd give myself is show up in the places that are going to be the most positive influence. Don't do what people think you should do, or don't listen to what other people, say you should do. Oh, you should go to this person, or you should meet that person. Think about who you are and what your life wants to look like in the next 5 years, and then start making that happen now. And for me, that's building a network of people who I can go to and just know that I'm not necessarily all of my ideas are going to be accepted. I want to be challenged, but I want to be challenged in a way that is going to empower me to find a solution and grow from it. And so they're the kind of biggest things that I've learned, really.
Like that.
And I think that's such a big final point to leave this on, that I think I often joke and say, competition is so 80s. It went out with a perm and a fax machine. Top level producers, top level talent are in the mode of collaboration. I know there's enough pie for everybody. And I think also you said a very important thing about directing your energy, being in the right room. If I am directing all my energy into how other people perceive me, that's a waste of my talent. I should be focusing on what I can physically do and how I feel about me. Being in the right room ties back into, if I'm in a job that's toxic, that's killing me, am I in the right room? That's really a very important thought there.
I think in general, the thing that I learned from my bosses the most when they were managing global teams, big budgets, and I was brought in to do that, was that there's always going to be things that go wrong. Always. And it might be something out of 10. It might be something that's gone wrong. It's like a 1 out of 10, or you might have a 10 out of 10, or you might have multiple things happen in one time. If you focus on the negative and the bad and the things that have gone wrong, you will miss all of the amazing stuff happening around you, the opportunities, the people that you can meet, conversations that you might overhear that could give you something from it because you're focused on something else. There's so much stuff around you that is positive, but if you focus on the negative, you're never going to realize that those things are happening around you. So you just have to always try and stay positive in whatever way you can.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Jess. It's been so exciting to finally get you on the Assistant Lab, and it's been such an exhilarating first podcast back after the summer. I was going to say summer break, but it really wasn't a break for me, for most of us. But it's
hours and hours. Like really is.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Well, you're going to be at our conference in London on one of our panels, and then co-chairing Scotland with me next year, which I'm really excited about because I've always had to chair on my own for 20 years. So I'm actually going to be able to share the load. So watch out for that. I'm really looking forward to our collaborations going forward and everything we've got planned. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for having me. I've absolutely loved it.
Been such a joy. That this time has absolutely flown past, and you've given us some real, as I always say, golden nuggets for our listeners to take away. Thank you very much for your time, Jess. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Assistant Lab. If you enjoyed this content, you know what you need to do. Feel free to share it and help us grow our subscriber base.
Join us again next time, and until then, keep experimenting, innovating, and improving your skill set.